It has now been 2 weeks since Godzilla Kong: The New Empire hit theaters, and I'd say it did pretty well. Critically, it probably could have done a whole lot better, but when it comes to pleasing the fans and making a truckload of money, I'd say it was a pretty big success. So, in honor of that, I'm going to be ranking the entire MonsterVerse using a tier list, all of the movies and the Monarch TV show, because I gave that a watch because it's part of the universe. I thought maybe it was going to be important to the new movie, and I was like, okay, I'll check it out, I'll give it a watch. So that will be included as well. And yeah, I have nothing else to say. So let's get started with this tier list, talking about the first movie that started this entire universe and came out 10 years ago, Godzilla. The 2014 version, directed by Gareth Edwards, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a big fan of this movie. I don't really like it all that much. I remember seeing trailers for this movie when it was first coming out, and I thought it looked fucking awesome. Like, there was some awesome shots of Godzilla, you know, stomping around, and he looked gigantic, and I thought he looked so fucking cool. And I remember just seeing trailers for this movie and thinking it looked awesome and badass, and then watching the movie itself, it was quite boring. It's a very slow-paced movie with some really boring-ass characters, except for Bryan Cranston's character. I'd say his character was interesting enough for what we get of him before he gets fucking killed off. But yeah, I just thought all the characters were really boring. We have Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch together in a movie before the Avengers, and they're both pretty fucking boring as the main characters. All of the stuff with Godzilla is amazing. It looks awesome. CGI looks great, and Godzilla looks awesome. I'd probably say the entire finale was pretty lame, with Godzilla fighting the Mutos, or whatever they're called, in the city. It was just really dark, and you couldn't really see what was going on. I know some people are going to say, oh, it makes it more realistic when it's like really dark and you can't really see much, but I still want to see what's going on. I still want to, actually see stuff. Like, in the movie itself, it's kind of just pitch black. I did see an edited version of the scene where someone actually brightened it up, and you can actually see what's going on. It's still kind of dark, but you can at least see what's going on. In the movie itself, you can't really see anything. It just makes the entire finale pretty fucking lame. And other than that, like, we don't even get a lot of Godzilla in this movie. He's like barely in the movie, and we're kind of stuck with really boring military stuff and boring main characters, and just that's the entire movie, and it was really disappointing. Like, there are some awesome shots of this movie just showing how gigantic Godzilla and all these other monsters really are. There are some awesome shots in this movie, and yeah, the CGI looks great, but overall it's a really slow-paced movie. The characters are really boring, and it's not at all very rewatchable. Like, if you really like this movie and found the human characters interesting enough, that's great, but they were just really boring to me, and it just made the movie less rewatchable. So yeah, I probably put this movie in C. Yeah, I really don't like it. It's not terrible. There are some great shots in this movie with Godzilla, and when we do get him in the movie, he is pretty cool, but the finale, it was really dark and really lame, and boring human characters, really slow pace. It was just so many issues with this movie. I don't really like it, man. Not a fan. So yeah, moving on to the next movie, which is Kong Skull Island. It does suck that Legendary gave us a pretty lame Godzilla movie, but hey, at least they gave us a pretty fun King Kong movie. Yeah, I enjoyed this movie quite a bit. I liked it. It's actually more fun than the 2014 Godzilla. It's actually entertaining. Most of the human characters in this movie are still pretty lame. Despite the fact that we have Captain Marvel and Loki and Nick Fury in a movie together, the human characters are still pretty lame. But I'll give them this: they are much more entertaining than the characters we got in Godzilla. So they're not great characters, but they're a lot more entertaining. So I'll give them that. And yeah, this is just a really fun movie. All of the stuff we get with Kong are really cool, and they look great. There's a really well edited shot, I think, when we first meet Kong in the movies, where like someone's about to fall off a helicopter and go into Kong's mouth, and right when it's about to happen, cut to a shot of someone chomping on a sandwich, and really fun stuff like that made the movie really fun and really enjoyable compared to the 2014 Godzilla. Some really well edited like parts of this movie that was just really great. And yeah, Kong is a lot more like serious in this movie compared to how he is in the recent Godzilla King Kong movies. He's a lot more destructive and a lot more serious and aggressive. So, I mean, say what you want about it, but it was fun. I'm gonna admit, it looked great and it was really fun, and I enjoyed it. Not just King Kong, but there are other monsters in this movie that were really cool, like the giant legged spider that we get in like the middle of the movie. I thought that entire scene was really awesome, and as someone who has arachnophobia and is kind of afraid of spiders, it was a pretty cool scene, and it was pretty terrifying, and it was pretty great. I really liked it. It was cool. So some really cool monsters that Kong comes across, and it's really fun. I'd say when the human characters come across the tribe, the Iwis or whatever you want to call them, once the characters meet up with them, that's where the movie starts to get a little uninteresting, and it starts to slow down a bit. But other than that, this is a really fun King Kong movie that I had a good time with and definitely enjoyed a whole lot more than the 2014 Godzilla. This was a major improvement, so I'm putting this in A. It's not amazing, it does slow down a bit, the characters are still not all that great or that memorable, but the movie looks great. King Kong was really cool, some really awesome looking monsters, and this is a really fun movie. I really enjoyed it, and I would definitely rewatch it again at some point. Moving on to the next movie, which is Godzilla King of the Monsters. I honestly just went into this movie hoping that it was going to be an improvement over Godzilla 2014, and for the most part, it is. It's a slight improvement. It's definitely a lot more watchable because we have a truckload of monsters throughout the entire movie. We have Godzilla, King Ghidorah, Mothra, all these different monsters that we get to see throughout the entire movie, and it's pretty fun. It looks pretty great, and it's definitely a lot more enjoyable than the boring-ass 2014 Godzilla. Unfortunately, we still do get a lot of really boring human characters in this movie, like Millie Bobby Brown, coming from Stranger Things. She was really big around the time this movie came out, and they put her in the movie, and yeah, she's not bad. She just doesn't really provide much for this movie, and she's not all that interesting, unfortunately. So human characters are still not great, and this time around they're giving some really bad dialogue, some really cracking a lot of jokes that aren't that funny, and some just really cringy dialogue. There's literally a part where someone says, "Oh my god," and someone else says, "Zilla," "Oh my god, Zilla," oh Jesus, dude, what the fuck is that? The monster stuff is pretty cool. I mean, Godzilla, unfortunately, is still a bit absent, which kind of sucks, but we at least get a whole, different monsters throughout the entire movie that, kept us to enjoy the movie, unlike 2014 Godzilla, where Godzilla would disappear and then would be stuck with a bunch of military human characters for, a big chunk of the movie. It's not really like that this time around. We still get boring human characters, but we at least get different monsters that we get to see throughout the entire movie. So that was good. One thing I don't really like about the fight scenes or the kaiju fights in this movie is that a lot of it's just kind of a lot of crazy weather. It's most of the time it's really dark, and it's either snowing or it's raining, and it's just really weird weather throughout all of the kaiju fights, which I guess gives the movie a more unique look compared to the last two movies. But either way, I still don't really like it, and it kind of makes the fight scenes less enjoyable when you got a bunch of other shit going on screen, just a bunch of rain and fucking dust and other shit all going everywhere, and it makes the fight scenes less enjoyable. So that was a bit of an issue for me, but it still looked good, and the CGI on the monsters still looked great as always, so it was kind of whatever for me. But yeah, I don't really have much to say about this movie. It was a slight improvement to Godzilla 2014, and it was alright. I'll put it in B. It was a fine movie. The kaiju fights were good enough, and there was some cool looking monsters, some cool shots. It's just the human characters were really boring and had some bad dialogue, and I don't know, it was alright. It was a pretty forgettable movie, I'm not gonna lie. Moving on to the next movie, which is Godzilla vs. Kong. I'm gonna say straight off the bat, this is probably my favorite movie in the MonsterVerse so far. That's not me saying that this movie is amazing. It's a fucking masterpiece. It's not all that amazing. It's just the best movie we've gotten so far. It's just the most fun I had in this universe. I liked it, I enjoyed it. It was cool to finally see Godzilla and Kong in a movie together, fighting each other quite a few times in this movie. That was all great. I enjoyed it, especially the scene that took place in Hong Kong, the colorful city and stuff, and seeing them fighting together. That was just a great fight scene, a really maybe the best fight we've gotten ever in this entire MonsterVerse. I just really enjoyed it. It looked great. You could actually tell what was going on. It was a really fun fight. It was awesome. It was just felt like watching two siblings just beat the shit out of each other. That's just what it looked like. It was a lot of fun. I love that fight scene. That was great. The human characters were fine. I mean, I'd say all the human characters that we get with that are with Kong throughout the whole movie, like Rebecca Hall's character and the deaf girl that, kind of communicates with Kong, all that. I thought they were just passable. They were fine. They were good enough. I could deal with them. All the other characters in this movie, Millie Bobby Brown, who's working alongside this podcast dude, played by Brian Tyree Henry's character, and Julian Dennison, who's playing this random dude who just joins them, I guess, and cracks a bunch of unfunny jokes. I didn't care about that part of the movie. They were just exploring some Apex company, and I just didn't care about that part of the movie, and I didn't even really like Millie Bobby Brown at all in this movie. She just had a weird attitude for like the first bit of this movie, and I just really didn't like her. She was making weird choices, and I don't know, something about her in this movie I just didn't like. So one thing I do like about Kong in this movie is that you actually care about him, you actually root for him. As someone who's more of a Godzilla person, I actually did like this movie. Actually made me appreciate Kong a lot more. So I'm glad we got to kind of spend more time with him, and I at least got to root for him a lot more and actually care about him, despite the fact that I'm more of a Godzilla person. So I appreciate that this movie for actually doing that. So that was good. That was all great. And yeah, seeing Godzilla and King Kong team up, well, briefly team up at the very end to defeat Mechagodzilla, I enjoyed it. I liked it. It was cool. It was short, but it was still kind of cool to finally see these two actually, like, you know, fight and hate each other throughout the entire movie. To see them actually team up and defeat Mechagodzilla, that was a very satisfying part. And then they go their separate ways at the very end, like, all right, we're cool now. I'm just gonna go, and I'll see you later, man. We're cool. I enjoyed all that. That was fun. So all the stuff we actually get with Godzilla and Kong together was all really cool and really fun. And I enjoyed this movie. I liked it. It's not... I'll put it an S. That's not me saying that this movie is extraordinary. This movie still has a lot of issues. It's easily the best movie that we've gotten in the MonsterVerse so far. It's the most fun I had personally. So I liked it. So yeah, I don't know. It's good. It's the best movie we've gotten. Yeah, moving on to the next, not movie, but show, is the Apple TV Plus Monarch Legacy of Monsters show. Yeah, I don't know. I just gave the show a watch just because it's a part of the universe, and I thought maybe it possibly tied into Godzilla X Kong because that was coming out really soon, and I don't know, I just thought maybe I had to maybe check it out just so I didn't be confused with anything that happened in the newer movie. And yeah, this is not even a continuation of Godzilla vs. Kong. This is more of a prequel to, I don't know, I think it takes place like after the first Godzilla. So I was like, okay. And you know, I watched the first episode and I was like, okay, that was all right. An okay start. Maybe as we keep going, it'll start to get interesting. And it didn't. Yeah, this show was pretty fucking boring, and I honestly really didn't like it at all. I kind of hated it. It's just the human characters were not interesting at all. Godzilla is in the show, you know, in parts, but he doesn't really do much. And there are different monsters that we do see throughout the show, but they don't really do much at all. There are so many episodes where an episode just ends with like a short appearance of a monster, and then it just abruptly ends, which was always so fucking annoying. It always bugged me. So that was great. That was great. Yeah. So not a lot of monsters. It's more of a focus on the human characters, and I thought maybe if they at least make the human characters interesting, I would, you know, let it slide. But they were really boring, and I just didn't care. When they actually tried to make the human characters in some way interesting, it just didn't work, and I just didn't care. It was really the finale, the last episode, where things were actually, you know, concluding and wrapping up, where I actually started to get a little invested, and I was kind of enjoying myself. And we actually finally got a kaiju fight with Godzilla and some other monster in Hollow Earth, and we actually got a full-on kaiju fight at the very end, and it was like, okay, well, there we go. That's kind of cool, I guess. And then not only that, the very last shot of this movie is a little King Kong cameo appearance. Yeah, and then the show just ends. I'm like, damn, you showed all of this at the very last episode when, you know, things are actually starting to wrap up. And yeah, it was disappointing. I really didn't like the show. It wasn't for me. I know it's like, oh, it's not a Godzilla show, it's a Monarch show. What did you expect? But I don't know. I just was hoping to have fun with it and at least have some interesting human characters, and I don't know, the show just wasn't for me. I really couldn't care. So I'm gonna put it in D. Sorry, I know that seems a bit harsh, but I really didn't like the show, and I'd probably honestly never watch it again. It was shit, man. I just didn't like it at all. Yeah, moving on to the next movie, which is the brand new Godzilla Kong: The New Empire. I've already made a full review on this movie, so if you want to go check that out, you can, but I'll just say that I mostly enjoyed this movie. I mean, I didn't really like it as much as Godzilla vs. Kong. It just wasn't as fun. It just felt like not as much was going on. I feel like the human characters were a lot less interesting, even the returning ones, like even the deaf girl that we saw in the last movie, who got to, you know, communicate with Kong. She just wasn't as interesting this time around. All that, they didn't really do much of that this time around, and I don't know. It was just whatever. Rebecca Hall's character from the last movie comes back, just not as interesting. Didn't really care. Brian Tyree Henry's character, the crazy podcast dude, once again back. He's just cracking a bunch of unfunny jokes. Didn't care about him. Yeah, a lot of the human characters were pretty fucking bad and pretty lame. didn't really care about that. But when we actually get to the finale with Godzilla and Kong finally, actually, having a bit of a rematch and then eventually teaming up, all that was fun. And kind of like Godzilla vs. Kong, there are some really fun, dumb moments in this movie with the monsters. Like, there's a scene where fucking Kong is just seeing Godzilla again, trying to convince him that something is wrong, and then Godzilla's just fucking charging at him, and then Kong's just trying to tell him to stop. Stop! All that was fun. Every time they do some really stupid things with the monsters, I honestly mostly enjoyed it. But when they tried to do some weird, odd things with the human characters, that's where I was not having fun at all, and I was just like, I felt miserable. I was like, can we just go back to the monsters? Fuck me, I don't care about the human characters. Jesus Christ, I was actually getting angry and frustrated in the theater. I was like, oh my god, can we just go back to the monsters already? When we get to the Iwi tribe thing, that's where it just starts to get weird. I was just like, The villains in this movie, Scar King, not a very threatening villain, I'm not gonna lie. He was, I don't know. And Shimo, she looked cool, and her, I guess, freezing a breath ability or whatever was cool, and I don't know, the villains were kind of mid, I'm not gonna lie. And Scar King, the way he dies is just getting all, frozen by Shimo and then destroyed. It was cool, but also I was like, oh, well, wasn't Scar King meant to be a really big, intimidating villain, and what, this is how you kill him off? Damn it. I was expecting a whole lot more, but okay. Godzilla is once again sidelined or absent, just like in the last movie, which actually disappointed me a lot more, because I thought, okay, the last movie he was kind of absent, that's fine, they'll actually do more of him in this movie. Not really. He does appear throughout the movie, just for like maybe 10 seconds, and then they come back to the human characters or Kong. So just do more with Godzilla, please. Like, I don't know, that really disappointed me. But the entire finale, seeing them team up, fighting Scar King and Shimo, that was all fun and it was satisfying. And seeing King Kong ride on Godzilla's back, I guess, it was dumb, but I enjoyed it and just made the entire finale even more exciting. So I didn't mind all that. That was fun, and I don't know, it was okay. I'll put it in B. It's alright. It's just not. It wasn't as fun as Godzilla vs. Kong, and it was really the finale and seeing Godzilla and Kong team up where I was like, okay, this movie's alright. I guess it's fine. It's alright. And there you go, guys. This is my tier list of the entire MonsterVerse, I guess, and I hope you like it. Hopefully you don't disagree with it too much. Yeah, just make sure you leave your comments down below of what your ranking would be of the entire MonsterVerse. I would really like to know your thoughts, and yeah, hope you enjoyed. And after watching Godzilla x Kong, I was like really unsure of how they could possibly get my attention for another movie. Like, what else is there to do? What could you possibly do next? Until Adam Wingard, the director of these last couple Godzilla King Kong movies, has said that if he does end up making a third movie, he will want it to be more of a focus on Godzilla. Alright, you got me. Too easy. There you go.